Unit 4.2 point, sorry, Unit 4.3.3, the dark side of family relationship. Now, when we talk about this dark side of family relationship, of course, if we talk about the functionist perspective over here, if we have a look at this through the functionist point of view, functionists see family.
Dark side said something like demotivated.
No, no, no. When we talk about the functionist point of view, the functionist perspective strongly advocates the positive side of the family. The functionist perspective, functionists in general, believe that the family has a lot of good things to offer to individuals within a family. However, on the other hand, that includes moral support too, yeah. And however, on the other hand, if we talk about the feminist perspective, or if we talk about the Marxist perspective, there are other views or other perspectives that aren't in line or that do not really agree to this functionist stance about family playing a positive role for the society. To take a start here, or rather, before we even take a start, I'd want you all to have a look at this question. If you have a look at this question, the question over here that we had in March 2021. The question says, evaluate the view that the family life is harmful for some family members, right? The family life is harmful for some family members. And if we have a look at the points in support of it, we have different notions of so we could add up content from there, the experiences of grandparents, so on and so forth. Yeah. The dark side of the family, elder views within the family, or any other appropriate point. On the against side of the view, we could talk about functionists, how functionists believe that families, they fulfill all the functions. Then we talk about greater equality for women in the home. Then we, sure. Women choose domestic roles on their own as well. Families vary according to the wishes and needs of its members. We're talking about family diversity, welfare systems to protect family members, that is Child Protection Act, so on and so forth. Likewise, यहाँ पे we could talk about this psychologist, we could talk about different stances on feminism, we could talk about NSPCC. On the other hand, in against this view, we could wait a minute. Against this, we'd have the functionist perspective. We talk about Murdoch, Parsons, Wilmot, Young, liberal feminism, postmodernism, different feminism, Beck and Hakim. Now, moving on, this is how your question looks like. Of course, the major chunk of what is required for this particular question, the topic that we're discussing today, उसके अंदर वो आपको मिल जाएगा. बाकी there's no restriction. आपकी पूरी your understanding on this unit family, you could bring in content from anywhere. Okay, before we proceed, I'd this gentleman over here, you wanted to know what NSPCC is. NSPCC is the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. ठीक है बेटा. These are a couple of slides from another book, The Critical View of the Family. You could talk about the dark side of family. You could talk about abuse of children. You could pause this and later on go through this. The abuse of children. Some statistical data to further support the point that you're writing. You could write down about domestic violence, the impact of family life on individual members, critical theory, domestic violence. Yeah, बोले.
सर फाइल में मैसेज
It's on your discretion. Your discretion. Child abuse.
मैं समझा आप नहीं आएंगे फिर
No, I'm here taking a class. Don't worry. You could write down about child abuse, and you could write down about. Okay, likewise. I mean, yes, this content is from one place. This ये से ऊपर ऊपर वाला. ठीक है, आप ये सारी चीजों को sibling abuse, rape in marriages, feminist criticism of the family. So, taking it ahead, moving on. Now, the functionist theory, but before that, it's unit 4.3.3, the dark side of family relationship. The functionist theory of the family, which tends to present a very idealistic picture of family life. Parsons, if you all remember, according to Dr. Parsons, nuclear family is the best and the idealistic family form, right? Parsons, for example, saw the nuclear family as a system of positive, loving relationships which meet the basic need for love and intimacy. Marriage is seen as particularly important as a source of companionship, emotional gratification, and psychological support. If you guys remember, Parsons, the prominent American functionist, the prominent middle class American functionist, the faculty member at Harvard University. According to Dr. Parsons, your nuclear family is the idealistic family form. Nuclear family tends to be the idealistic family form. Parsons claim करता है कि जनाब nuclear family, which he also referred to as the isolated nuclear family, and the idea behind referring to a nuclear family as an isolated nuclear family is that nuclear families today, with the passage of time, today as in I'm referring to the Parsons का time, that is 1960s. According to Parsons, nuclear family आपका वो इसको isolated nuclear family क्यों कहता है? Because the idea is that this nuclear family is isolated from the wider kin. One. Number two, according to Parsons, if you remember, there are two basic and irreducible functions of a family, and these basic and irreducible functions of a family are number one, primary socialization, and the second one is stabilization of adult personalities. Stabilization of adult personalities. So, according to Parsons, for example, saw the nuclear family is a system of positive loving relationship which meet the basic human needs for love and intimacy. So we see Parsons all in support of a traditional nuclear family. Moving on, if we talk about Michael Young and Peter Wilmot in the last lesson, the last topic that we were studying, we were discussing conjugal roles. We had spoken about how Young and Wilmot had compared their data from 1950s to 1970s. We could write down about, we should remind ourselves about how Young and Wilmot studied working class families in London. According to them, आपके पास जो 1950s के अंदर families थी, they were more based on the idea of symmetrical they were more based on the idea of segregated conjugal roles, or in other words, separate conjugal roles. On the other hand, if you talk about the study that they reconducted in 1970s, the study that they reconducted in 1970s, according to them, these segregated conjugal roles had now moved on towards more integrated or joint conjugal roles. So even Young and Wilmot, they suggest that the nuclear family is egalitarian, or in other words, equality based. Okay, equality based, and this, like I said, was based on the study that they conducted in 1970s. In 1973, Young and Wilmot wrote a book. The name of their book was The Symmetrical Family. अभी जो किताब इन्होंने लिखी थी, The Symmetrical Family, इस kitab ke andar they mentioned how they saw that there had been a change, a move from segregated conjugal roles to more integrated or joint conjugal roles, right? Conjugal roles kya hote hain? The roles that are performed by men and women either in a family or a cohabiting relationship. Overall, then the nuclear unit is seen as good for society and positive for the individuals who comprise it. So, number one, we saw how functionist Parsons supports the idea of a nuclear family. Number two, we spoke about Wilmot and Young. Number three, we talk about the New Right perspective. And by now, we all should know that the New Right perspective, okay, this is page number 200. So we know how the New Right thinkers, they portray nuclear family as the ideal family form. So, however, this positive picture of nuclear family has come under sustained attack in the last 30 years of feminist criticism of the family. Okay. So this suggests that the ways in which modern families, the ways in which modern families are organized suit men and the ruling class at the expense of women and the working class respectively. अब अगर हम लोग feminist perspective से criticize करते हैं functionalists, Wilmot and Young, and New Right perspective को. So, according to the feminist perspective, there is more of power and control that men have within families, and this power and control can be can be misused as well. And this which leads to the exploitation of females, the oppression of females, leading to many females experiencing violence. Now, this unit focuses on what is called the dark side of the family relationship, notably the idea that living in families can sometimes be very dysfunctional or harmful to women and children, right? Moving on. How is it that living in families such as a typical nuclear family can end up being dysfunctional and harmful, right, to women and children? Let me take you back to the question that we had. Evaluate the view that the family life is harmful for some family members. Clear? Moving on. अच्छा, जहां पे हम बात करें some family members की, तो जरूरी नहीं है कि we are talking about males and females. You could also bring in the notion of age patriarchy, how adults see themselves responsible for disciplining kids and making things happen, or making younger individuals in a family do things the way they want them to do, or live their lives the way the adults want them to live. Now, according to Chile in 2002, observes that family relationships can easily slip into damaging relationships, and love can often turn into hate in moments of intense emotion. Love can often turn into hate in moments of intense emotion. Now, there are many sociological commentators who even claim that a typical nuclear family is more demanding if you compare it with an extended family. Why is it more demanding? उसको कहते हैं कि ये ज्यादा demanding इसलिए है क्योंकि typical nuclear family के अंदर जो individuals रह रहे होते हैं, because वो कम होते हैं comparatively as compared to an extended family. So the expectations now, the emotional expectations now from each individual family member, that increases. ठीक है? So he notes that we have to face the paradox that families are contexts of love and nurturance, but they are also contexts of violence and murder. Similarly, Anthony Giddens, the person who came up with the structuration theory, structuration, the philosophy that we should be catering to structures, the significance of structures, and agency as in individuals in this regard, in this context. Okay. So Anthony Giddens argues that it is the nature of family life that makes violence in families a common occurrence. He argues that family life is characterized by emotional intensity and personal intimacy. That means that it is normally charged with strong emotions, often mixing love and hate in it. In these circumstances, even minor arguments can escalate into acts of violence. The growing isolation of the nuclear family from extended family networks may be increasing this intensity. Like I just said, this growing isolation of nuclear family units from different extended family units. Like extended family units के अंदर, there are many other people who could probably interfere, intervene, or play the role of an intermediary to resolve the conflicts that emerge within families, right? Typically of husband and wife. मीडिएटरी मतलब वो इंटरवीन कर रहे होते हैं, वो एक सुलह करा रहे होते हैं, ठीक है? A review of global family related violence suggests that families may be toxic and dangerous environments, particularly for women and children. Global statistics demonstrate that murder by other family members, domestic violence, which is mainly perpetrated by husbands on their wives, and child abuse, which can take several forms ranging from neglect to various types of abuse, emotional, physical, and sexual, are shockingly common. We spoke about domestic violence. We spoke about child abuse, right? We spoke about murders. अब यही चीज को इसी slide को मैं इधर squeeze करके I'm taking you a slide back. You see, you get all of this over here. You could add up content from here after giving it a read. domestic violence. Moving on. In the UK, there are 3 domestic murders of women every 2 weeks. That's quite a number, accounting for 40% of all female murder victims. European Union statistics show that 18 women are victims of homicide each day in Europe on average, and 12 of these are murdered by intimate partners or any other family members. The United, now देखिए ये जो भी आपके पास statistics हैं, typical questions, a typical concern that students have is, sir, क्या मैं ये सारे याद कर दें? Beta, it depends on how good you are at learning these statistics. One, number two, you, while writing an answer, because right after this topic, this wouldn't really take long, at max half an hour more. And as soon as we're done with this, I'd want you all to attempt the question that I showed you, right? Attempt it at home and then show it to me. So, women were the victims of murder worldwide in 2012 within the family. An ongoing study by the World Health Organization and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine shows that more than 35% of the murder of females globally, known as femicide, is committed by an intimate partner. That's again quite a number. 35. It's written here, beta. Clear? Now, the same study estimates that only 5% of all murders of men are committed by their spouses. Look at the difference in terms of number. That's quite a number. Or other family members. These statistics are probably conservative given the high amount of missing data, especially in less industrialized country, right? जहाँ पे cultural acceptance नहीं होती, तो out of shame, many families choose not to let the higher authorities know, to let the law enforcement agencies know. One, they have lost a family member. Number two, they wouldn't want to bring shame to the family. So, in many less industrialized countries or relatively less developed countries like ours, or we have India, साउथ एशियन कंट्रीज यहाँ पे ये अक्सर होता है, हम सबको पता है ये, ठीक है? तो 3/4 of all global violence is domestic, and these are only the reported cases. According to WHO, on average, about 200 children are murdered each year by family members in the UK. WHO, that is World Health Organization, reports that nearly 60,000 children are murdered each year worldwide. Clear? These are just statistics. A Thomson Reuters Foundation survey in 2018, this is a recent one, surveyed 548 experts on women's issues and ranked India as the most dangerous country in the world for women, right? Because it is still heavily engaged in customary practices such as forced child marriages, child trafficking, and slavery, stoning, and female infanticide. The USA was ranked joint third when respondents were asked where women were most at risk of sexual violence, harassment, and being coerced into sex. Clear here? Coercion is using force. Likewise, something I'm not really sure, you can figure it out. So, when we talk about honor related murders, I'm sure this is more honor killing, जिसको हम लोग also commonly typically known as honor killing in our country. Honor related murders की जब आप बात करते हैं, honor related murders involve a girl or woman being killed by a male or female family member for an actual or assumed sexual or behavioral transgression, including adultery, sexual intercourse, or pregnancy outside marriage, right? We get to hear about, yeah, sad instances like this very often in our country, or even for being raped. Often the perpetrators see this femicide as a way to protect family reputation, right? To follow tradition or to adhere to a particular interpretation of a religious teaching. Murders in the name of honor may also be used to cover up cases of incest, right? I'm assuming you guys know what the word incest means. And there are reports of people using the honor defense as a way to receive community and legal acceptance of a non-honor murder, right? That happens too, right? Up एक by, I mean, a murder which has any other reason to it, you could easily cover it up with referring to it as an honor related murder. The WHO estimates that there are 5,000 murders in the name of honor each year worldwide. And remember, these are the reported ones. Although this is believed to be an underestimate, these killings occur mainly in parts of the Middle East and South Asia, but also among some migrant communities in countries including Australia, Europe, and North America. Cleared here? So we were discussing the dark side of family. We initially spoke about domestic violence and abuse. Under this heading, we also spoke about honor related murders. Next, let's talk about toxic masculinity. This idea, this notion of toxic masculinity has been discussed by us in detail when we were doing टॉपिक 1.3, that is social identity and change. अब हम gender identities की बात कर रहे थे. So toxic masculinity, or in other words, young boys being brought up in a particular manner, these young boys being brought up in a manner that them being brought up in a manner, or them being socialized in a manner, them being brought up in a manner or them being socialized in a manner that it gets difficult for them to not be able to accept women or females earning, or I mean, there's a lot to it. This toxic nature doesn't only have to do with women being a part of paid employment, but again, it's just one tiny part of it. And along with it, it's about leaving boys under the impression that men are not supposed to openly show emotions. Men are not supposed to uh, I mean, the entire notion of masculinity has a lot to do with the concept of hegemonic masculinity. Boys are supposed to be aggressive, less sensitive, less caring, and they're not really expected to, like I said, show emotions, so on and so forth. So, according to this concept of toxic masculinity, this eventually leads to these young boys growing up into adults that have traits of getting involved into violence or violent activities at home. uh, Another, which is again bad for them as an individual, bad for the family, and bad for the society as a whole as well. So, talking about toxic masculinity, another negative consequence of family life is that boys are socialized into a form of hegemonic masculinity that is often toxic in terms of its negative effect on relationships between men and women. This toxic masculinity often underpins patriarchy and legitimates the abuse of male power in many areas of social life. Some sociologists claim that masculine norms and boundaries have become so distorted in family socialization that some men believe that sexist and abusive behavior against women is socially accepted. Clear here? A few characteristics of toxic masculinity. G? Yeah. They see it as something that's totally okay. हाँ?
लॉ में नहीं है मेरा टॉक्सिक मैस्कुलिनिटी
लॉ में नहीं है, बट आपकी सोशलाइजेशन प्रोसेस की वजह से.
इसमें ये भी मैस्कुलिनिटी में ये आके दैट्स थिंकिंग ऑफ द मैन इज सुपीरियर.
Yes. The notion that men are superior, very good, very good. Right? Them being socialized, them being brought up in this particular manner through their gender role socialization. Uh, Jordan Stephens in 2017 argues that gender role socialization, that is the way boys are brought up, this is what I was talking about, gender role socialization, in modern families partly accounts for this. He claims that males are brought up to believe that they are hardwired to behave in patriarchal way, to brag about breaking hearts, to speak to girls and women inappropriately, and to see the investment of love and trust in others as weakness and vulnerability. He argues that many males have experienced a traumatized childhood. Now, according to Jordan Stephens, this could possibly be because many young boys, many males, when they were growing up, sorry, yeah, many boys, or they were the ones who saw female family members being abused firsthand. So, according to Jordan Stephens in 2017, many of such males, they have probably experienced a traumatized childhood. Now, what sort of traumatized childhood are we talking about? In which they were not allowed by older men, often the fathers, to express weakness in any shape or form. And you know what? You not being able to express your weakness or your vulnerability or the sensitive side of you can again I mean, to the world, you look all fancy and less sensitive, but then deep down inside, you're a human being too, right? There would be things that would eventually be bothering you. Instead, they're told to man up. We get to hear this very often, and to exert their male power over others via physical violence and emotional manipulation. Consequently, he observes that as boys become adults, they fail to learn from these childhood experiences and to understand why they desire power over others. Do we all understand this? Any question? So, yeah, according to Jordan Stephens, he argues that men need to recognize that the way they have been brought up is a problem, that they are suffering from a crisis of masculinity. Now, we had again discussed this idea of crisis of masculinity earlier when we are doing gender identities. Crisis of masculinity, with the passage of time, things are changing. There have been enormous amount of changes that our societies have experienced, right? And not to forget, there has been a rise in male unemployment. At the same time, there has been an increase in the extent to which females used to be part of paid employment today. And for men who have been socialized with this, like this book says, hardwired notion of hegemonic masculinity, it would get very difficult for them to accept this. It would get very difficult for them to accept that they have to rely on the income or the money that is brought back home by female family members. And we assess over here, in answers like these, you could always, for cross cultural comparison, you could write down about South Asian countries. ये तो वो सारी चीजें जो हम अपने गिरदो नवा में देख रहे होते हैं अपनी सराउंडिंग्स के अंदर, right? So the crisis of masculinity that denies the capacity to acknowledge and understand their childhood pain. It is this which prevents them from ever truly loving themselves, which prevents them from trusting others and treating women as equals. He argues that males need to learn that it is okay to be feel sad and to cry and to have loved their mothers and father while growing up. Clear? All of this we discussing this under the heading of toxic masculinity, right? How this toxic masculinity can eventually lead to the experience of family life being harmful for different individuals, and in this case for males themselves too, because not only is this idea of toxic masculinity, not only is this toxic masculinity, like I said, bad or detrimental or harmful for females, at the same time, it is as bad, if not more, for males too. So he claims that it is only when young males acknowledge and realize that they have been wounded by their childhood socialization that masculinity will undergo detox, right? Moving on, the radical psychiatrist review. अब ये देखें, आपको एडमिन लीच यहाँ पे नजर आ रहा है, आपको आर डी लेंग नजर आ रहा है. यही नाम मैं आपको दो स्लाइड्स पीछे लेके जाता हूँ एंड आई शो यू we had them over here. Clear? So finally, some psychosociologists known as radical psychiatrists argue that the family relationships have potential to cause mental illnesses. We're talking about family relationships having the potential to cause mental illnesses. According to Edmund Leach, who argued that the nuclear family, with its privacy and tawdry secrets, is the source of all our discontents. Leach argues that because the nuclear family is isolated and privatized, family members tend to make great emotional demands of each other, right? ये मैंने थोड़ी देर पहले भी कहा था. न्यूक्लियर फैमिली के अंदर कम फैमिली मेंबर्स होते हैं. This emotional demand, the expectations, the emotional expectations that you have from other family members, it might end up making your home, your family, that is considered to be a safe haven, a place that would get you suffocated, that would make you feel suffocated, and which could eventually lead to mental illnesses. So the nuclear family is isolated and privatized. Family members tend to make great emotional demands of each other. For example, parents expect a great deal from their children. However, more often, I mean, look at this. I'm sure you've heard about stories like these. Parents wanting the child to be a doctor, a surgeon, and the child later on being diagnosed with hemophobia. Hemophobia, in other words, the phobia of blood. Clear? So, however, more often than not, children fail to live up to their parents' expectations in the field of education, and parents may be disappointed, even disillusioned with their children. Spouses too make unrealistic demands of each other. Leach argues that the result is the parents fight and children rebel. Clear here? So again, we're discussing all of this under the heading of the dark side of the family, Beta G. The radical psychiatrist R.D. Lang in 1971 suggested that some family members may become mentally ill because of the nature of family relationships. He suggested that schizophrenia, a mental illness, for example, is partly caused by experiences within the family. It's partly caused by experiences within the family. Of course, if you have psychology as a subject today, tomorrow, when you study A2 psychology, and if you've been taught abnormal psychology, so pehla unit aapka schizophrenia, where you'd learn okay, no, it's a way beyond that as well. I mean, it's not only this. This could be one of the reasons, whereas we have many other reasons. Could be because of biochemicals, could be because of your cognitions, could be because of your genes, so on and so forth. So this radical psychiatrist Ling argues that family relationships are potentially destructive because the intensity of nuclear family life means that we worry about how much we are loved by other family members, particularly our parents. For example, we might suspect that a particular brother or sister is the favorite of our parents. Ling argued that we react to this anxiety by forming alliances within the family, right? घर के अंदर ही आपने देखा होगा बच्चे अपने ग्रुप्स बनाना शुरू कर देते हैं. Get it? Alliances within the family in order to maximize our chances of receiving love. For example, we might side with one parent against another in an argument, which again would eventually lead to more of discontent in terms of emotional love and support that different family members experience. Clear, dear? Do we all understand this? Inshallah. Yeah, once I'm done with this, I'll check answers. So, do we all get this? For example, we might side with one parent against another in an argument. Ling argued that as a result of these processes, family members become like gangsters, offering each other mutual protection and love to be used against other family members. We consequently become mutually suspicious of each other's motives, and this becomes the basis of mental breakdown and family arguments and feuds which can last for years. So this the content that we have on this particular topic in this book isn't much, and there's another piece of content that I like sharing with you all as well. Like I keep on saying, do go through your key terms. Again, we have our summary over here. Go through this, and like I said, I'd expect everyone to attempt this question and get back to me. Meanwhile, I'd want everyone to read through this, give this a read on your own, and if there's any question, let me know. I'll just mute this from here, read through this, and let me know. All right, that's pretty much it for the day. Take good care of yourselves. Stay happy, healthy, safe, and protected. Stay humble, spread positivity, spread smiles, and Allah Hafiz.